Welcome to the Leaders of Lasting Impact podcast. I'm Matt Pohl, your host, and I'm pleased today to introduce Thomas Rosenberg, who's our guest today. Thomas is the founder and principal of Regenerate Consulting.
Coaching.
So, yeah, Thomas, glad to have you on board here today.
Pleasure to be here, Matt.
Yeah, well, we know you're passionate about helping leaders of small, mid-sized businesses, and that's really what the Rewild Group is about. And so we wanted to have you on today to hear your story and kind of tell us about things you're doing in that space. And maybe we should start off with just a little bit of background about yourself, kind of your journey here.
Sure. So I feel like many coaches have had a circuitous route to answering the call to coaching. And mine was certainly circuitous. I grew up always passionate about helping or guiding other people towards growth and transformation.
Okay.
And yet in my family, I didn't feel like that would gain approval as a male for a career path. And but instinctively, all the way through, looking back at this point, I see that there was a through line across my 25 plus year career, which is really helping organizations, individuals, and communities get comfortable with change, lead through change, and flourish.
Okay.
And, coaching, as I mentioned before, wasn't the primary focus of all that work, but it was an ancillary part of it. And I had a near fatal bicycle accident in 2014 with a brain injury, frankly, a traumatic brain injury. And that, with broken bones as well, but it was a traumatic brain injury that really forced me to reassess, what am I doing? What am I capable of doing? And what am I doing with the rest of my life energy? And it took me 2.5 years to trust my brain again. And from there, it was very clear for me that coaching was going to be my full-time role. And so I began with a certification in integral coaching with New Ventures West here in San Francisco as an integral coach. And I received that in 2017.
Okay. So looking back, do you see that event as kind of pivotal in taking you from what had been the earlier season in your business career to now where you're pursuing the coaching and advising on a full-time basis?
Yes. I mean, it was really, I was much more focused on the technical side and helping people with strategy around technical aspects, primarily focused on environmental initiatives.
Okay.
But, I worked in 20 countries on 5 continents as a subject matter expert in that. However, all the way along, I was inserting myself into, now that I've been hand selected to run this initiative inside this organization, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm, a quality person, or I'm a material scientist, or I'm great with this, but I have no idea how to talk to them over there. And so I was just like, okay, you have to get comfortable in this new skin while you help your organization transform. And so I was instinctively going for those pieces, but it was really after the accident that I just said, why am I wasting my time backing myself into somebody else's box, somebody else's expectations?
Right. And so how many years now has it been since you've really been pursuing the coaching side of your career?
6.5.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but in full time, I'll say that.
Okay. Fair enough. I know that can be not a clear delineation, right?
Right. Yes. But yeah, being full time in coaching, it's been approximately 6.5 years.
Okay. When you look at your customers, your clients, and could you explain a little bit on kind of the size of businesses that you work with? Are there certain industries that you focus on, maybe geographic focus?
Sure. So what I have found I mean, I've worked with, obviously, this is my sweet spot. So I've worked with folks on either side, but it seems to be in the mid-market company, 200 to 2,000 employee size.
Okay.
I've had clients that own a 26-person shop. Right.
Okay.
I've had folks that work in an organization that now has closer to 5,000 employees. But when we started, they were exploding in size, and they were around 2,400. Right.
Okay.
So it's just, it just, what I have found, and the reason why I am finding that is that below, say, 100, 150 employees, there isn't necessarily the willingness to invest in coaching for individuals or to reassess their culture.
Okay.
And when they start getting to a certain size, around 200, they're just like 250. It's like, oh, okay, if this is going to work and we're going to grow the way we want to grow, we have to invest in the culture to make sure that basically it becomes scalable, but also that people aren't churned in the process, because frankly, staff turnover, burnout costs a lot more money than most people realize.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting point. Would you say you go across many industries, or there are a few industries where you have some concentration of clients?
Well, I feel like so geographically, because you were pointing to that too, the pandemic expanded me beyond just the Bay Area.
Okay.
And prior to that, though, because of who's here in the Bay Area, I was, my clients seem to have fallen mostly into 3 buckets.
Okay.
And I would just, no surprise, tech, biotech, and the broadly lumped together environment, renewable energy, clean tech space.
Okay.
Just right. And so that's just like, well, there's a lot of that here in the Bay Area. And so it's right. But I'm relatively agnostic when it comes to industries. As long as there's values alignment, I'm open to working with anyone.
Okay, great. When you are initially interacting with a client, is there a common theme about the challenges they're facing that help you see that, okay, this could be a good fit for the value I deliver?
So a lot of people come because sometimes it can be a precipitous event. For example, a decadal birthday. And they're just like, wow, okay, I just hit this number.
Okay.
40, 50. It's like,
yeah, it has a 0 in it, right?
Yeah. And they're just like, what am I really doing? Right? Am I living the life that I expected, that I wanted? Right. And so sometimes it can be like, is this feel right to me? And if it doesn't, what are my options? So there's that. Then there are also folks who are coming to me or they're pointed to me by other people within the organization, perhaps their boss or HR or what have you. And it's around, we hired this person, they're not integrating. Or he, she, they can't lead a team. Like they've been in this role, they're supposed to be leading for 2 years, and there are complaints all over the place from every level saying that this person sucks as the leader.
Okay.
Right. So, but it's also like that. Those are the primary, questions. It's like, challenges, delegating, cultivating trust, the team building, that sort of thing. But the psychographics of the people I work best with are those who are willing to do deep inner work, who are curious, collaborative, and passionate about helping others grow, because I'm going to be asking that of them.
Okay. And it sounds like you're working with senior leadership as well as down into the ranks a little bit?
Yes, because of that 200 to 2,000 employee size, right? Sometimes like they don't use VP, they use director,
Okay.
right? And so I just say director of the C-suite.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that way it's really easy, and so yeah.
Okay. Now, when you're actually delivering your coaching engagement, are you pulling from your own created resources, from things you've curated from others, kind of wisdom that you gain from others? What kind of methodology or content are you bringing to the table?
So I blend a lot in my coaching, and the two primary pillars in my coaching are, one, my integral coaching training from New
Okay.
Ventures West, which was my foundational training back in 2016, 2017. But also more recently, during that training, I learned about somatic coaching, which is really working through the body, on the body, with the body. And that is how, and since I took that certification program, which I finished about 18 months ago, that is how I coach. So somatic coaching holds that we are what we practice. So how you sit, how you walk, how you talk, breathe, stand, the language you use with yourself, with others, that shapes your body, which in turn shapes your experience of the world and shapes how others experience you. We learn through the body. So think reading, writing, walking, talking, driving a car, riding a bike. When you first learned how to drive a car, you're just like, okay, there's a gear shift and there's a pedal and then there's another pedal and then there's a indicator, and how do I handle all this? And then there's merging traffic, and you're just like, oh my God. And now you can talk on the phone, eat a sandwich, change the station on the radio, right? Because it's embodied.
Right.
And so, not to say you should be distracted, but it's really just saying this is like, I've embodied this because of the reps I've mastered this. It takes 300 reps of something new to create a habit, 3,000 to embody it, 10,000 for mastery. And rather than talking, for example, about a time you got frustrated, I want to see the shape, for instance, of what it looks like in you being frustrated. You're having a difficult conversation and you start like, okay, what do you do? Like, well, I'm like, no, I want to see it in the body, right? And I was talking with a friend recently about how he struggles with certain relationships in his life because they expect him to just be this receptacle, just like, let me just offload all of my emotional woes onto you because that's how you've shown up all my life.
Right.
And he just felt so burdened by that.
Right.
And so, and you can feel the tension, right? You can see the tension in my shoulders. Right. And it's just like, okay, how can you come back to center, soften that, open, connect to yourself, and perhaps find a way to create a clear boundary for yourself so that maybe there's the possibility of creating a reciprocation in that relationship.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's what I'm really helping folks do.
Okay. That's very intriguing. So those two certifications that sound like have really play a foundational role in your approach then.
Yes.
Okay, cool. I'd be curious if you could tell me a story, obviously keep it confidential, but of a client, where you've helped them really make some real progress, some lasting progress. Maybe a smaller mid-sized business leader or somebody inside one of those organizations.
Yeah, sure. So I have someone that I worked with towards the tail end of the pandemic. And, really what he was struggling with was trusting himself. That's really what it boiled down to.
Okay.
He struggled without trusting himself. He was unable to really fully step into the role that he was asking, or he was asked to. And so the manifestation of that was challenges with delegation, with team building, with cultivating trust with and between his direct reports.
Okay.
As I mentioned, I sort of alluded to him earlier, but there were all of these complaints about his perceived lack of leadership.
Okay.
He was known as this absolutely stellar individual contributor because single-handedly, he had been responsible for the bulk of the biotech firm's IP in a particular area.
Okay.
And yet he was the only non-PhD in the R&D department. So he felt inadequate. And he also felt he had to do everything possible so nothing fell through the cracks. And so he was spending a lot of time. The metaphor I gave him when we started working was, you're a fire juggler. Your team is surrounding you. You're sitting there juggling all of these batons, but you're not handing them off. And so you wonder why you're feeling burnt out, why they're not supporting you, because you're not letting them. You're losing sleep and you're feeling anxiety and more stress. So, excuse me. So we started working together. We created these customized reflection questions. We added somatic practices, and we really transformed how he's approaching life and leadership.
Okay.
And we gave him back hours a week. We were able to deepen his relationship with his team and with senior executives. We created a foundation where he was able to really strengthen the company's position, both internally and externally. And he started to see how his habitual patterns actually were inhibiting him from achieving his goals. And he finally admitted to himself that he was unconsciously attached to some of these these individual or contributor role responsibilities, right? Because he's no longer doing the research. He's no longer setting up the processes for cultivating certain either vaccines or biotech processes. And it's like, that's not your role right now, right? Your role is to support the people who are going to do that for you, right? And I typically work with my clients for a year, and on an individual basis. And he, it was right around the 9-month mark where there was this aha moment for him. For the first 8 or so months, he was really focused on his team. And he started to realize, oh, I'm not giving myself enough space, but I'm working really hard to make sure that my people they feel listened to, they have space to grow, they feel like they can come to me, right? Because he had to demonstrate his trust in them before they were going to trust him.
Right.
And that was really challenging for him. But there was this aha moment, and he's like, oh, like, now I am feeling confident in being able to hold space for others. And he also recognized that in order for the company to achieve its goals of expansion, that his wealth of knowledge needed to be not only infused or diffused throughout the R&D department, but across onto the commercialization side of the organization as well. And as he deepened in his trust for his ability to be that person to say, okay, look from a strategic perspective, rather than, well, this is how this process has to work. Right. And so if his boss who hired me said, well, at the 8.5-month mark, if you asked people what they thought of him, they were still very doubtful that he was going to ever be promoted, and perhaps even be demoted back to more of an individual role. But at around the 10-month mark, if you asked him, the senior leadership team was saying, wow, this guy is on fire, and we can trust him, and he recognizes how this is going to help us strategically. So he was able to shift from struggling to maintain a team of 6 to having more than 18 on his team.
Okay.
And he was seen as trustworthy, and when I checked in with him last, he was going gangbusters. He had over 26 people under him.
Wow.
Yeah. And he felt really solid.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, that's great. There's the Rewild group really focuses more on the I would call the structures within the organization, less on the individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really 2 parts of that, right? You need healthy and solid structures, but you need healthy and solid people as well.
Right. Yeah. I feel like if the individuals thrive, the organization is going to thrive. And, when people feel heard, seen, and accepted, they can soften.
Okay.
Right. If you're walking through and I come into a room and I'm like, brainstorm, you're like, okay, I can't really brainstorm from this position. Right.
I have to let go of my fists.
Yeah. But if I'm like, oh, okay, we can sit down, we can have a conversation, we can see where this goes, but I have to feel like I'm being heard, I'm being seen, and I'm accepted for who I am and what I'm bringing.
Right.
And the leader, in my opinion, needs to model that so that you can request it of somebody else.
Yeah. That's good. As you've, over this past 6+ years doing coaching, would there be maybe a word of advice that you might be willing to share? Maybe it starts at the CEO level, the owner level, that either could use some help or has people underneath of them that might need help. Maybe there's a word of advice you could give them.
Well, I feel like, I kind of just said it. For me, leadership is a way of being. It's how you walk through the world. It's about congruence between your words and your actions.
Right.
And so if you want people to step up, you need to step up. And so, in other words, be the change, to quote Gandhi, be the change that you want to see.
Yeah.
That means embody the change. And when people see that congruence, because in so many situations that I have seen, it's like, well, those are our values, but we don't act that way.
Right.
So if there's congruence between your words and actions, then people are going to be much more willing to say, okay, this is what the organization stands for. This is what this person stands for. This is how I align with that. And this is what I am comfortable stepping up to do.
Right.
And then they're going to really feel a lot more invested in the organization. And they're going to show up in a very different way.
Right. And that leads to the positive impact on the organization, the bottom line eventually. So
well, fewer sick days, less staff turnover, better team morale, higher productivity. And when you combine trust and collaboration, and someone can relax, then creativity can rise to the surface. When you have that and you add vision, you've got innovation, which is the top line.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. I mean, it's both, and so I feel like that's really where people miss.
Right. Okay. That's great, Thomas. If someone in our audience says, hey, this resonates with me, either myself or someone within the organization could really use some coaching to really get them to where they could be, but there's something that's holding them back, what would be the best way for them to reach you, get in contact with you?
Thank you for that question, Matt. The simplest way is to go to my website, which is regenerate.coach. And right above the fold, there's a little button that says Explore Possibilities. Click on that, and you will go to my scheduling link, and we'll find a time to chat, hopefully within the next week or two.
Okay, perfect. Well, that's great. And again, to reach Thomas, you can go to regenerate.coach, and there's a button there that you can click, and that will get to his calendar for you to schedule a time. So thanks again, Thomas. It's great to have you as a guest. I know you're passionate about helping business and the individuals within businesses reach their full potential, and that's what we're about as well. So I want to thank you for being our guest, and I want to thank our audience for Leaders for Lasting Impact. And we just hope that you've gotten something tangible out of this episode, and will join us for future episodes. Thank you.
Thank you.